So we had several federal announcements this week, yesterday specifically, from our Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau, regarding some more initiatives to create childcare spaces to improve upon access for this affordable $10 a day program that he has created for us here in Canada. And I thought it was really an important time with these announcements and kind of the campaigning around those announcements to really put some perspective into this program and how it's working, at least from an on the ground operator standpoint. And I mean, this is my opinion, so everyone's entitled to have their own view on this, and I think we all will, depending on where we sit and what our participation is in childcare and in our sector here. But I think that, this is a massive undertaking. This is a national, was intended to be universal, affordable childcare program for all Canadians at the cost of $30 billion federally, 30 billion taxpayer investment into this childcare program. And, I think we're seeing different views. We're seeing these announcements like yesterday where this program is really being shown to be such a successful thing, and that it's life-changing for families and for women returning back to the workforce and all of the things. And for those who can access it, absolutely, $10 a day and affordable childcare can be life-changing. And especially when things in Canada are so unaffordable, and it's really difficult to have a family, and so much expense for everything from groceries to utilities. Having extra money in your pocket and having childcare that you can afford and is accessible really opens so many doors for families. But what's not really being said is that only about 33% of Canadian families can actually access this program. So we're 3 years into this program, 3 years of a 5-year program, and we only can get 33% of families into these affordable childcare spaces across the country. That's not being said in these federal announcements. And I think that the use of some of these numbers in these announcements is really misleading. And it's really giving this perception that this program is very successful and very accessible and inclusive to all Canadians, when it absolutely is not. So just to give some perspective, right now, there is about 2.2 million children under the age of 5, and this program really caters to children under the age of 5. We have created 750,000 spaces. So 750,000 of the 2.2 million Canadian children can actually access this program. The rest are sitting on wait lists, and the wait lists and the pressure that those wait lists are putting on the Liberal government, and really the pressure that they're putting on them to justify this program and the constant taxpayer investment into it, is what is, I think, pushing these announcements and pushing these, federal plans, more money, federal investments, I guess, back into this program in provinces like Saskatchewan and Ontario yesterday. Because we have a federal election coming. We have a national childcare program that I think is probably one of the few successes that our Liberal government can really use to stand on going into this election. And it really needs to show that it's working for them and for the public, in order for the public to continue to buy into this national childcare program. In my opinion, this program is absolutely not working. It rolled out in a very underfunded way. $30 billion sounds like a lot of money, and it is absolutely a lot of taxpayer money. But it didn't really go into a program in a way that it could properly fund it. And when we look at a $10 a day childcare program for all children, coast to coast in Canada, $30 billion is absolutely not enough to create that. But I think the problem where we're at right now is that we have provinces across the country. I mean, Canada has a mixed market childcare program, mixed market childcare sector. You have your nonprofit, your public sector childcare, you have your for-profit, your private childcare sector. We have them mixed all through the country. There's different amounts of them and different percentages depending on your province. And that's the way it's been. And I feel like this program is rolling out to create only a nonprofit public sector in childcare. which is fine. I mean, this is public money, and if that's the way the government wants to roll it out to create, a public system for childcare, wonderful. But let's be transparent about that. And we also need to understand our childcare sector and what happens to the private people that have created childcare spaces across the country. The people like me, mostly women, who have invested their time, their savings, their expertise to create their programs in their communities and serve families. What happens to us? We're not nonprofit. We can't, in other provinces outside of Alberta, we really can't participate in the $10 a day program. So families can't access these supports for them in our centers because of our business model, because of the structure of our programs. And it's become such a stale rhetoric, I think, across the country, that it's really created this ideology that somehow there's this huge divide and this massive difference between a childcare center that's for profit and a childcare center that's not for profit. And that's really not the case. That's not what you see on the ground. That's not what you see when you walk into a center. And I think that most parents really don't know what the business model is of their childcare center. You're not walking into a childcare and choosing it because it's a private childcare center or a public childcare center. You're walking in and you're choosing it based on the environment, on the quality, on the educators, on the feel that you have when you bring your child there. So it's just crazy to me that we're okay as Canadians and as parents to have a government step in and take over our childcare sector and reduce our choice so that we can only choose one type of childcare, which is standardized nonprofit childcare, and that all of the other private childcare centers, all the other choices in childcare, are just natural consequences. They're just thrown by the wayside in order for this ideology of a public system to move forward. There's been no offer of buyouts. There's been no acknowledgement given to the investment of the private sector in our childcare space, which is significant. And the dependence on childcare spaces in private sector is huge in Canada, which is why we're seeing such a massive amount of wait lists and people not able to access this universal childcare system, is because the private sector has been stopped. We can't invest in the space, we can't expand, we can't open new centers under this national childcare program. Families cannot see private growth, which would have allowed for the centers to grow with the demand that this program created. Only nonprofit sector is invested nationally in this program. Yesterday, all of the announcements were only funding new nonprofit centers, new nonprofit spaces in Saskatchewan and in Ontario. We have operators in Ontario, private childcare operators, with 300 families on their wait list, ready to open a new center to accommodate the need. And the government saying, no, you can't invest in this space. You can't create new spaces, even though the demand is there, even though you have the capital, you have the expertise, you could go do this as a private operator. We're not going to allow it because it doesn't meet our ideology of a public sector in this space. We're going to take more of your taxpayer money and we're going to invest in it to create nonprofit spaces, but we won't let the private sector invest their own capital. We're going to take more money from Canadians who are already struggling to keep this program going, to keep this sinking ship afloat. We're throwing more money on it instead of acknowledging it, that it's not working. I am just, every time I hear these national announcements and I see more money coming out of our pockets as Canadians, I'm just shocked. I just can't understand why our government is not taking a pause and listening to parents. Every day there is a story from another parent in the media right now who cannot access this program, whether they're in Nova Scotia, whether they're in BC, Alberta, Ontario, anywhere across the country. Parents can't access this. They're losing jobs. They can't go back to work. They can't go back to school because they can't get a childcare space. And you won't let the private sector in to continue to grow and meet the demand. It is absolutely irresponsible. It's just ridiculous. And I hope that at some point the Liberal government will listen to Canadians and just pause and let's start over again. Let's try and make this work so that it actually works for Canadians. It works for children. It provides flexible options for childcare, not just full-time daycare in one type childcare. It provides flexible options for parents who work outside of that 9 to 5 schedule. It provides options like preschool and part-time care and all of the things that Canadians have been looking for and using in childcare. We're not stripping it away and trying to force all Canadians into a one-size-fits-all childcare system. It's just so disappointing and frustrating as someone who's a mother and a childcare operator to continue to hear the rhetoric, to continue to see the campaign promises made, the fluffy press releases and announcements yesterday at places like the YMCA, which was so ironic to me because here we are federally making a big announcement at a YMCA in Ontario, completely disregarding that one other YMCA is closing down the street, or over here that the YMCA has been all over the news because they're closing centers because this national program is not sustainable. It's just frustrating. So I am just here today, I guess, venting a little bit of frustration as a Canadian who has invested in this program, like all of us, and feeling that our voices are not heard, and feeling that, you know, Canadians and parents continue to be gaslighted under this. There's a lot of misconstrued information that comes up in these conferences and announcements, and the numbers used are really deceptive. I mean, we have our federal government, we have our federal ministers responsible for this program, like Minister Suds and Minister Freeland, you know, celebrating that 750,000 Canadian children can access this program. Sounds amazing. But if you don't know that there's over 2.2 million children under the ages of like 0 to 5 in Canada right now, which is what this program really caters to, 0 to 5 years old, 2.2 million, but 750,000 is a successful number for this program. Where's all the other kids? They're in lineups, they're in wait lists. This program is only accessible for about a third of Canadians. And that's a success. That's what we're announcing when we're putting more of our money into this program. We're trying to make it work. We're trying to make it look like it's successful. $30 billion federally, plus all of the other provincial money and the new announcements yesterday, continuing to bail this program out when we're only hitting numbers 3 years into this program that represent a third of Canadian families. Not a great investment, not a successful number in my opinion. And I think that if you are a parent in Canada, if you are a childcare operator, you really need to talk to each other, read the stories, listen to what's being said about this program, not just the promises and the, wonderful announcements. I think we need to start to really understand what we're investing in and what transformation is happening to our childcare system across the country. And is this truly a childcare system that represents the needs and wants of Canadian families, and is going to support our children long term? My answer is no. I think this is a failing system and a failing program and a really poor investment.